Nancy Pelosi lands in Taiwan. What next? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. Yes, Nancy Pelosi did indeed land in Taiwan. That happened late at night local time. And as I hope to show, that landing will test the patience of the Chinese as few things have. Already it has a lot of people suggesting that the Chinese have bluffed and now look weak. Are they as weak as that? Or are they biding their time? Before I get into any more detail, I do want to shout out to the sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of good merchandise there, including this t-shirt that I have selected for today, which reads, "No one is more hated than he who speaks the truth." Signed, Plato. Now then, what exactly do we know about what's happening in Taiwan? The information I have comes from the Telegram channel of Dr. Stephen Turley. I've put a link in the description, and I urge you all to join Telegram and follow that channel if you really want to know what's happening in Taiwan and in the Ukraine. First, a word about time zones. Taiwan time, or Taipei time, named for the capital, is also Chinese Standard Time, or Beijing time, which is 8 hours ahead of Coordinated Universal Time, abbreviated UTC. Now that last is also known as Greenwich Mean Time, or London time in the winter. Eastern or New York time is 5 hours behind UTC, but New York Daylight Saving Time is 4 hours behind. Now, if you got all that, at 9:45 p.m. Taipei time came word that a U.S. VIP transport calling itself Spar 19 listed Taipei as its destination. 35 minutes later, we got the confirmation. Nancy Pelosi's aircraft began an approach toward Taipei. Elements of the Taiwan Air Force, not the U.S. Air Force, escorted that flight in. Immediately thereafter, the mainland government closed its airspace to commercial aviation in the direction of the Taiwan Strait. A minute later came reports that the People's Liberation Army Air Force scrambled and sent several Sukhoi 35 fighters toward Taiwan. That evidently did not stop Nancy Pelosi's flight. Sirens went off in China's Fujian province on the mainland side of the straits. PLA ground forces moved several assets, including tanks, onto the beach across from Taiwan. And at 11:07 p.m. came a report of dozens of U.S. Air Force jet fighters taking off from Japan, headed for Taiwan. That from Intel Slava Z. Evidently, the world learned that, eventually the world learned that 21 PLA Air Force Sukhoi 35 jet fighters entered the Taiwan Air Defense Identification Zone. They drew warning fire from Taiwan Air Force elements and apparently nothing else. At 2:41 a.m. Wednesday, Beijing time, Dr. Turley forwarded a post from Global Intel Watch. They carried a tweet from Hu Xijin of Global Times. This same official, if you recall, had threatened to shoot down Nancy Pelosi's plane if it landed in Taiwan under American fighter escort. Now, maybe because she landed under Taiwanese fighter escort, no one made any move to shoot her down. But more than 4 hours after the landing, Mr. Hu tweeted this message, to which I'll left a link in the description. Quote, "PLA announced that it would conduct live fire exercises in 6 regions surrounding Taiwan Island, a situation that surpassed 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis. This is not just a demonstration, but an actual exercise to liberate Taiwan. Pelosi's visit is bound to speed up China's unification." Unquote, Mr. Hu. The replies to this tweet, at least those having illustrations, look like catcalls. I have links in the description to 3 examples. The first has what looks like a life-size plastic model of a donkey, complete with base, done up like the mainland Chinese flag and labeled Chinese Army. He's looking in a mirror and sees the reflection of a lion in that mirror. Two obvious Chinese men in dark suits, one of them wearing horn-rimmed eyeglasses, are holding up this mirror which has the legend Global Times across the top of it. I gather those two men present Hu Xijin and President Xi Jinping. The second is a picture of a soldier handling a computer keyboard as if he's handling a rifle. His mouth is elongated and ends in a gun barrel that is obviously firing a shot. The third is an origami figure, orange with black stripes, like a tiger. I think you get the idea. Twitter also shows several tweets comparing President Xi and/or Mr. Hu to the children's book character Winnie the Pooh. Now, I have decided not to include links to those. Now, I have another tweet, a tweet that seems to be darkly wishful thinking. I did put a link to that in the description. Before I describe it further, I want to shout out to another sponsor, BitNext. This is your replacement for Zoom, Slack, the Google G Suite, Microsoft Office 365, Dropbox, WeTransfer, and Chili Piper, among others. Unlike any of them, BitNext protects your content and conversations so well that even the administrators can't see it. So, this is your channel for secure comms, conferences, cloud storage, and file sharing. Best of all, everything is back-end. You don't even need client software. Yeah. If you have a browser, you can use BitNext. So follow the link and give them a try. 28 days free of charge. You can't beat that with a stick. All right. Oh, where was I? Yeah, more about that last tweet. It shows a photograph of what could be a bombed-out section of the city of Mariupol, where the Azov battalion got their collective clock cleaned. And it includes this message. If Chinese unification looks anything like Russian-Ukraine unification, for example, turning everything into dust, then that's not a victory. Well, I have it on good authority that that unification between Russia and those parts of Ukraine where Russia has enjoyed its most prominent victories has not looked like turning everything into dust. To the contrary, Russia has sent massive humanitarian relief convoys to the areas of its most intensive operations. They also have sent construction crews for rebuilding of bombed-out areas. So that bombed-out cityscape in that tweet, it's likely under repair already. Now, the back and forth over Taiwan involves more than ground and air assets. It includes naval assets as well, including USS Ronald W. Reagan CVN-76, which, in case you might have forgotten, is a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, and 3 other U.S. Navy ships. Exactly why Nancy Pelosi picked this time to go to Taiwan is far from clear. At least one source tells me that Paul Pelosi, Nancy's husband, has lately invested heavily in NVIDIA, Taiwan's premier computer chip maker. Now that could be one reason she wanted to visit the island. Now other sources tell me that Nancy Pelosi has borne a grudge against mainland China ever since Tiananmen Square. Apparently she visited the square without an invitation shortly after the incident with the guy standing in front of the tank. Chinese officials threw her out of the country. Still another source suggests that the White House came slowly to defend Pelosi's trip after first saying, "Oh, we don't want to make them mad." The reportage, even now that the landing has taken place, seems very confused. Some of it suggests dissension in the higher echelons of the U.S. government. And what happened to those U.S. Air Force assets that were supposed to have scrambled out of Japan? Dr. Turley forwarded one report about those jets from Intel Slava Z at 11:07 p.m. China time. And after that, nothing. As of 3:30 a.m. China time, everything is quiet. Nancy Pelosi plans some meetings and an award ceremony of some kind before leaving Taiwan Wednesday evening. Now, what exactly does the Biden administration want? Did Nancy Pelosi go to Taiwan entirely on her own, against White House wishes and desires, or did they send her there hoping to provoke a big confrontation? President Biden has a motive for wanting a confrontation. He desperately needs to distract people from the unmitigated disaster that has been his administration. For that matter, Nancy Pelosi herself needs that distraction too. Quite apart from her shady insider investments, if she has any, in Taiwan, and quite apart from any grudge she bears over Tiananmen Square and her treatment around that time, she has another, plainer motive. Unless something drastic changes voter perceptions of the Democratic Party, she will lose her speakership. And she might never get to be Speaker of the House again. Biden's drone strike against Ayman al-Zawahiri, who took over al-Qaeda, or the base from Osama bin Laden, comes from the same motive. This is a distraction, and Biden needs all the distractions he can get. And by the way, Eric Woods Erickson asks quite reasonably, what was al-Zawahiri doing in Kabul anyway? Because our withdrawal, that's why. Now, why haven't the Chinese moved with greater force? Why, for example, did they decline to shoot down Nancy Pelosi's plane? Was it strictly because she landed in Taiwan under a local fighter escort, not an American one? Well, Chinese officials have used flimsier excuses than that to save face after failing to carry out a dire threat. Still, they threatened to shoot and then they didn't do it. Now that makes them look weak. Or are they as weak as that? China is the oldest of all human civilizations. With great age and lifespan come patience. Maybe the Chinese have made this one of their proverbs. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Link in the description of the article to Stephen Turley's Telegram channel, to all those tweets I mentioned by Mr. Hu and his cat-calling detractors, and to conservative news and views. I have another link to the awesome online store and to BitNext, as I also mentioned. And if you like what you've heard, you can like this video. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link and also a link to my earlier video about this Taiwan business. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.